Episode 4 of CEAT Timeout, and it's that time of the tournament in episode 4, fittingly, where we get to see what our top 4 might look like for the World Cup. So we got plenty to look back on, brilliant games to review, some upsets. Again, it's been such a disappointing World Cup for Pakistan. They just can't seem to find any momentum. But speaking of momentum, Australia seemed to find plenty. All it took for the Aussies to find their straps was for Matthew Hayden to leave the country and go back home. Now I'm going to get hold of him. Haydos, why have you left India now and gone back to Australia? This is when the Aussies are turning up.
Well, Raunak, you've got to do what you've got to do, brother. What more can I say? If that means that I'm going to stay home while Aussies keep winning, then I'm quite prepared to do so.
And you can see he's cleaned up nicely like a good boy. He was sporting the beard last week. What's happened? You go home and your mum says, clean that up?
Yeah, Mum says it's her birthday on the 28th. She said, son, you've got to get rid of that. So who am I to argue with Mum?
Well done. Absolutely. Now let's talk about the standout games of the week gone by, Haydos. Australia really look a serious threat now. India have beaten New Zealand. They've got one foot in the semi-finals. South Africa are flexing some muscle as well with the bat. What's been your standout game that you can look at this week?
Well, I think there's been probably a couple. Firstly, India and New Zealand. That was a big matchup because they were sitting pretty at the top of the table there. Obviously, India now have perfect record. So big week, big upsets. That one against South Africa when they didn't turn up in Dharamshala, that was look out for the giant killing of the week. It was a week of the minnows, so to speak.
Yeah, well, at least South Africa have responded, and fittingly, if we look at the CEAT batter charts for this week, remember these are the CEAT ratings that are specifically curated for the Cricket World Cup to give you an idea of who's doing well. And well, Quinton de Kock right at the top of that list, back-to-back hundreds for him, 3 and counting in the tournament. Speaking of back-to-back hundreds, there's David Warner there, Kohli and Rohit are just having boss World Cups at the moment for India. And you also see Daryl Mitchell sneaking in at the back of what was a very good 100 against India in Dharamshala, right? Top batter for you of the week, Haydos, looking at those ratings?
It has to be Quinton de Kock. So I'm not going to disagree with the ratings this week, but some honourable mentions, as you said, to Davey Warner and Mitch Marsh. They were 2 great hundreds. Gurbaz and Zadran as well, and Rabat. That was a pretty special victory that they had as well over Pakistan. Kohli, as you mentioned rightly, just continues to grind out runs, not just runs, but chasing runs as well. So winning runs, so to speak. And South Africa's, other, flexing muscle type personalities. Miller continues to impress down the bottom. Markram didn't really show up this week, did he? He didn't have the week that he had in the first week. But Enrique had a terrific week as well. So lots of action with the bat with South Africa.
Okay, I'm going to move to the bowlers now, right? And all it takes is one performance from Mohammad Shami to break through in the CEAT bowler chart for this week. He finds some room there. Adam Zampa's really hitting his straps too. Mitchell Santner continues to be unstopped, just quietly going about his business. So that's a pretty good list if you look at the CEAT bowler charts. Remember, again, curated by the CEAT Cricket Ratings just for this World Cup. Standout bowler for you. Nice to see Shami there after just one game.
Yeah, well, it was good actually that we called it on the show that Shami was going to play. And he's a big name to replace Hardik Pandya. He's that sort of player. He's great with the bat, great with the ball, fantastic in the field. So he needed a performance like Shami delivered to really justify his, but his injury. So again, tick for Team India. But the player for mine is Adam Zampa.
Is that going to be your Sport Drive performance of the week as well, Haydos?
Yeah, I don't like to do the same individual more than once, Raunak, but he is. It was a toss-up, I must say, between him and Maxwell. It's very hard to go about the fastest ever 100 in a World Cup. But I'm going to go for a bowler, reluctantly, and Adam Zampa this week. For mine has been why Australia is now starting to, creep up into those, top 4. Obviously, a big match on the 28th, my mum's birthday. New Zealand play Australia. That one there is going to show, where New Zealand are exactly at. They've had one tough game against India like Australia did. Can they bounce back and defeat Australia and deflate Australia and put them into that sort of middle category, if you like. Pakistan, Australia. That's sort of the jostling in the big five that we've identified in this World Cup.
But before we move on, let's involve you guys as well. Hedos has been answering some of your questions on our social handles, but it's time to ask Hedos. And Anurag Sinha wants to ask you, Hedos, what is the best way to tackle spin on Indian tracks? Is it the sweep shot or dancing down the track?
If you're someone like Scott, the captain of Netherlands, by gee, he loves to sweep. That's his option. He'd sweep anything if he could do. But someone like Klassen, for example, will sit back in the back on his back foot and pull the ball at will. Anything that's just slightly short, and Miller's a bit the same. They roost back and then they put it over cow corner. Risky, that's not the way I certainly wanted to play it. I was always trying to use my feet. My first instinct was, and my mental cue was to say full, which means I wanted to get the ball on the full. But it seems like Maxwell Co., that's not their strategy. They sit back and they roost with the power that they have these days.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that, Hedos, and thanks to Anurag for sending that in. Now, you guys can get involved. The World Cup is getting to its business end, and watch out for the CEAT Predict and Win contest. Just head over to our social handles, answer some simple questions, and some lucky winners can get official cricketing merchandise signed by the great Matthew Hayden. The CEAT Predict and Win contest is something you need to get active and running with if you haven't already. Right, before we wrap up, Hedos, let's look ahead to some of the games. You've already talked about Australia and New Zealand. There's India-England, which was supposed to be one of the big fixtures before the World Cup started. Is that still going to be as big, or are we already starting to count England out with the gap that's coming up in the top four and the rest? Big week for Pakistan too. They lose to South Africa. That should pretty much be curtains for their semi-final hopes. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, well, that game, England and India, which was destined, as you rightly said, to be, the be-all and the end-all. And as it turned out, England have blinked, and so they need to get a wriggle on. I mean, they're not at all in any shape. They seem to be really off guard in terms of their run chases and also their ability to set. They've got to get going. So that's a huge match. As you rightly said, Pakistan's the same as well. Got to get going. They had their chances, but haven't. But the biggest one for mine this week is Australia and New Zealand. I mean, that there is really going to set either side firmly into World Cup contention, or it's going to sort of separate the men from the boys, so to speak. Australia dangerous. They're looking good. New Zealand have got the confidence. They're on a losing streak though, whereas Australia's on a winning streak, and that can make the difference in a World Cup.
All right, thank you so much to Matthew Hayden, the legend that he is. And the next time we have a chat with Hedos on CEAT Timeout, he'll be right here with us. Make sure you follow those handles that I told you. Watch out for everything that's going on in the Cricket World Cup. You've plenty to win as well. We'll see you again very soon on CEAT Timeout.